That's cool.
Okay.
Okay. Well, good afternoon to Stephen, and good afternoon to Luke Hartigan from South Africa. I think today is a mixture of temperatures, and so I'm hot, Steve's cool, and Luke is even cooler. And the really cool thing about Luke is that he's actually a really accomplished artist, and we're thrilled to have him on today. He's been working and living in South Africa, I think, most of his life. He's going to tell us a little bit more about that. Over to you, Luke. How did it all start? That's what we'd like to know.
I guess it started when I was a child, Dave. I was interested in drawing when I was a kid, and I mean really young, 8, 9, 10. And that interest in drawing has never dwindled. And so after going through senior school, I decided to study fine art. I went to Pretoria University. I didn't complete the degree because I realized in my 3rd year that if I wanted to live, I needed to be able to earn money, and artists don't generally make money. They tend up being teachers and living on the smell of an oil rag. And the legend of the artist in the garret is a truism. So I converted that to commercial art. However, I've managed to keep that artistic side of my life to a greater or lesser extent from time to time, depending on how pressurized you live, what the pressures of living would be, to continue doing it. And then about 8 years ago, maybe a bit longer, I started to do that in with a bit more serious intent, because technology had developed to such a degree that I could in actual fact promote my work or share it with people all over the world without having to go through 552 million art galleries and commissions and what structures, etc. So about 6 or 8 years ago, I started to develop a very small platform to show some of my work. 2 years ago, I decided to take that very seriously. And I started doing that and negotiating with galleries. And I'm happy to say that my gallery will be doing my first exhibition from when I was a young man, since I was a young man. So this will be my 3rd exhibition with a gap of some decades in between. But then after that, we'll see where it goes. I'll be exhibiting towards the end of August. And we'll see how that goes.
Where will that take place, Luke?
That's taking place in a Johannesburg in Johannesburg at a suburb of Linden, with the Robert Badenhorst Gallery, and we will have the traditional opening night, and then the work will be on sale and on offer from there on in, as that gallery will then represent me. And we will then start converting that into digital assets and so on, from the work from that into digital assets.
I'm interested to hear a little bit more about, you said you worked as a commercial artist. Could you explain a little bit more about what that meant and what you're actually doing? Because you see, you were sort of, was it what you wanted to do? Did it give were you rewarded as an artist when you were doing it, or?
The thing about working commercially means that inherently, to the artist, who is, I guess, traditionally insecure about their own work and lack self-esteem about the value of their work, and are constantly questioning their own inherent creativity and value. So commercial art just gives you a means to make money, well, not make money necessarily, but make a living. I got totally involved and immersed in the idea of our creativity being a business tool, and hence becoming a reasonably successful creative director in the ad industry in South Africa, and certainly made headway in branding and understanding of branding, and where marketing and communications can come together with creativity. So yes, it was very fulfilling, because there's no shortage of ideas. You just need to find the one that's really going to resonate. And if you think about it from an artistic point of view, that means that I'm using my own ideas to promote the businesses and solve business problems using creative communication tool. So that's so yes, it was very fulfilling. But
That sounds to me more like you needed more heads to put more hats on.
well, I mean, I'm one of those people, you know. I'm also, I mean, inherently creative. I'm a musician as well. I perform and play the guitar and I sing, and I've done so successfully, relatively successfully. Released an album. No, I haven't released it, but recorded an album, and made my own music, and now run a band that is done for love rather than for money. Because once again, it's only lawyers and accountants who make money. The rest of us plebs don't.
So,
Well,
so
I
the
mean, I
band,
can
so
talk
the
about
band
investment.
is the band is just for weddings, funerals, and bar mitzvahs. Then is that how we would see it?
I get that lucky. The band is when people to any audience that would listen to us, because we play we play quite an interesting mix of blues, folky, rock, and we take some of the world famous hits that are made by I don't know, choose one, Purple Rain, and do a version of it which is unlike anything you've ever heard. It's really just a creative. It's really just an extension of creativity for me. You know, and anything to do with creativity then becomes my purview. So
Are you torn between the two disciplines then, music or art?
No, they're all interlinked.
Okay.
But
if I had to make you choose, because I'm gonna be naughty now, if I had to make you choose, red or black, which one are we going to go for, art or music?
Well, life isn't about red or black. It's about multicolors. You don't have to choose one or the other. You don't have to take a red or a blue pill. You can take all of them.
Spoken like an artist.
Well, I mean, the other thing is, you know, to make it even worse, Dave, is that I write poetry, and I've had books, but I've had some poetry published in publications around South Africa.
Like I said, Luke, you are someone who has, you know, a lot of hats. You must have a lot of heads to put them on.
Art, music, branding, marketing, communications, and writing. Yeah, so it's at least four, and I consider myself incredibly lucky, very fortunate. Maybe the right word would be blessed. And I don't like to use words with a deeply religious connotation, but I'm exceptionally lucky. I'm one of a very fortunate number of people who have that ability. And if I have any regret, I haven't any regrets looking back at my life because I'm getting old. I haven't done enough of art. I haven't done enough writing. I haven't done enough singing, playing, performing, learning to murder other people's songs, and I haven't done enough artwork. So that probably is my biggest regret, is that I haven't done enough. But, you know, that's just a personal thing that I look at. If you would try to force me to choose, I would say I don't have any preference, but my least favorite creative process is probably my writing. It's is not one that I don't think I'm particularly skilled at. Oh, I could be better skilled at, but I can't choose between one or the other. I'm also a good cook, so you know that makes it even more difficult.
Well, the good thing is, and this is just a self-promotion, is my background is by you. Correct.
Exactly.
You're the one who drew my background, so for Noisy Panda. So there you go. So earlier you were telling us about two people that were very influential before we started to record.
When I was young, in order to make a living, I decided to. I worked through vacations and weekends at a retail shop in Pretoria that was an art materials and framing shop. And in the process of that, I met one of South Africa's most famous artists, a man called Professor Walter Battis. Battis was an old man when I met him. Probably one of the most preeminent artists that South Africa has ever produced. He's been represented by major artists. I think he was one of the top people in the Venice Biennale around 1970 something. So I mean, he's a world-renowned artist. And the other was Alexis Preller. And I was keen at that time in doing watercolor painting. And the reason I chose watercolor painting is because it's so extremely difficult. It requires an enormous amount of skill in draftsmanship and then an enormous amount of understanding of color. And he looked at my, and Prof was a watercolorist. Prof Walter Battis was a watercolorist. And he looked at my work and he said, come and sit with me while I paint. And so I spent about 3 months over a period of a year, maybe a bit longer, maybe 4 months, watching him work and asking questions about how he decided what color to use, where he got his line from, how he could understand, how he could look at a piece of paper and a mirror and know how to draw a self-portrait, but he never looked at it. So I watched him doing his favorite self-portrait. He was right-handed. He sat with a mirror on his left-hand side, looking at the mirror, and he drew with his right hand on the piece of watercolor Schillerhammer fashion board. And he never looked at his right hand, but what he captured was an exact replica of his face. So he was enormously influential into how the skill that he developed over a period of years. And the only way he developed it was by constantly practicing. He was a bit of a character, very strange individual from a social point of view. I mean, if you walked into his house for tea on a Sunday morning, he would kiss everyone. Stephen, you, myself, everybody, the dog, the cat, everybody, a welcome on the lips. And there he was, this hairy old half-bald white-haired man with my color now. And mwah, you get kissed on the lips as you walk in the door, and it was totally indiscriminate. Everybody got it. He would also walk around.
A weekend in San Francisco, sure.
I didn't want to suggest that, but that sounds like an idea where he would do it. But what he taught me was an incredible appreciation for color, because watching him work with watercolor and light, because technically, a watercolorist will tell you that you never paint the highlights. So the paper is the highlight. So you work from light to dark with watercolors. And the light has to be translucent enough to shine through that and lift the color into the place, which is what gives it its jewel-like texture and sparkling light from a distance. Technically, the light passes through it, bounces off the paper, and carries the color to the viewer's eyes. So that's scientifically what happens. And he was a master at doing that. Then the other artist who was deeply influential was Alexis Preller. Now, he knew my mother, and my mother introduced me to him around the same time. And at that time in South Africa, there were two sorts of art lovers: those who loved Preller and hated Battis, or those that loved Battis and hated Preller. And for me, I straddled both, because Alexis was also an enormously intelligent, very incredible tactile artist. He created color and texture and experimented with oil paint and experimented with intaglio, which was an old, almost Renaissance technique. He used impasto, which is another very old technique where you sculpt on the paper, and then with new materials. So in those days, he was painting on fiberglass. And he was also partly three-dimensional as an artist. So he was almost sculptural as a painter. And he built his own studio that on I can't remember which date was, probably 27th of June, the meridian of the winter solstice, the turret that he built over his studio at midnight, the moon was perfectly centered in the circle of the turret, and he worked that out. So he was an incredibly intelligent and gifted man. What he taught me was the importance of lyrical line and accuracy in draftsmanship. So he didn't ever want to see my paintings, but he wanted to see my drawings. He always wanted to see my drawings. And as a result of that, and with a love of etching, which I developed later on, I've always remained a draftsman. So you'll see some of my work a bit later, but the 90% of it is all drafting. It's all drawing.
And would I be correct in thinking that one of the first gentlemen you were talking about, he was just watercolors, and the second one would be oils and acrylics?
Oils, acrylics. No, both Walter Battis and Alexis Preller worked in many different mediums.
Okay.
But
do you have a preference then, Luke, which you would?
Yeah, if I'm going to paint
my
I do.
Understanding of art is that the watercolors are a lot more difficult than the acrylics.
They're incredibly difficult.
No mistakes.
No mistakes. No, you can't. And if you do have a mistake, you throw it away and start again. It's totally unforgiving as a medium, which is what makes it so attractive. Because when you crack it, it's beautiful. You cannot get better for my. But preferentially, yes. I only work in drawing media, so graphite, charcoal, pencil crayon, and Koki pen if required, various types of pastels. If I paint, I only paint in oil. Oil is, for me, has got a tactility and a depth which acrylic and various hybrid acrylic systems don't actually carry. So I'm a traditionalist in that sense. And I will also only paint on cotton canvas. If cotton or flax canvas, it doesn't really make a difference. I have painted on all sorts of things like glass, and I've experimented with ordinary sheet material, for instance, and various ordinary household equipment, household things. So I find a white sheet, stretch it on the canvas, see how it paints. And they never last. They're not, within 3 months of painting it, before the paint is truly dried, it's already cracking off normal material. So I ended up being a traditionalist in that sense. But yes, oils and watercolors for me. I sometimes use gouache, which is an early kind of different approach to watercolor painting. So it's a water-based paint based on a pigment with gum arabic, but where you avoid white in watercolors, you add white in gouache. That would be the only technical difference, really. I can show you some gouache painting that I've done, and I've got some watercolors which I can show you. However, the importance of it is that the medium has to resonate with the artist and his meaning. And if you, for instance, have a look at early Michelangelo Buonarroti in Florence in the 1500s, he would make maquettes or preliminary plans for his important sculptures, like David or the Pieta. And he always worked in sandstone or worked in clay to model it. And if you have a look at his maquette or his model versus the final result, there is a vast difference. The importance of that is that there's an enormous amount of planning that has to go into all the artwork. And I've felt, as a 21st century human being, that there was space to allow abstraction to take a different form. And that's where my work has developed. I know when we talked about this a couple of days ago, a week or two, you wanted me to explain my process. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, well, I'm fascinated because I know you, before we started recording, and you were talking about, having a new tablet now and doing things digitally. Is that something that does that mean your brushes are going to be put in the drawer? That you're going to go
not at all,
totally
no.
digital? No.
No.
How are they? Are the two valuable then? The digital side of it, and then again
the digital side. The digital side is valuable because it creates a different kind of mark. So, if you consider that I'm working on a screen, and you consider the screen is just a replica of paper, or canvas, or a surface on which you could paint or express yourself. When you make a mark digitally, it has a different mark. It has a different texture. It has a different light. It has a different feel to it. And if I'm honest, I have to use that medium to its best advantage. Now, what are the advantages of it? Well, number one, I can play with photographic technique. So I can play with light, and I can play with shape, and I can play with texture, where I have to plan all of those if I'm actually physically drawing them on paper or physically painting them on canvas. So what's important about it is that I can combine the two. So I will take a drawing that I've done, a monochromatic single graphite or charcoal drawing. I can scan that at high resolution, get it as balanced and as accurate to the color of the original drawing. Then I can put it into a digital realm and I can iterate that in 20, 30, 40, or 50 different ways. I can vary things like transparencies. I can create different digital effects. I can do overlays to create watercolor effects, but they are going to be digital, replicating watercolor to a degree, not the same as. And if you work carefully and if you work quickly, I can then take one drawing and do 20 iterations of that piece of work in 20 different ways. Very much like what Andy Warhol did with the Campbell soup can or Marilyn Monroe when he was silk screening and doing different color backgrounds and all those things. He was doing different iterations of the same creative thought process. I can do the same thing digitally. But more importantly than that, that allows me to express those digital thoughts or that digital creativity across a plethora of things that I would not normally consider. So what I'll give you an example is I could convert one of my paintings into wallpaper, which I would never be able to do without going through a huge technical exercise. 30 years ago, that was not possible to do. Well, it was possible, but it was very costly and very time consuming. I could convert that into any kind of expression. So if you liked a motif or a design that I'd done on a drawing, you could say, Luke, can I have that on a t-shirt? And I could say, of course you can have it on a t-shirt.
Whereas, well, my passion is the NFTs, and I know we've had this discussion before. We don't necessarily agree. We don't necessarily agree on the NFTs. So
we don't.
This is a platform to speak about everything. So
agreeing with NFTs is the wrong way of putting it. I
was just being polite, Luke. Today.
No, but don't be polite. I'm more concerned with the concept of rarity and ownership in a digital realm and what that actually means. So if it's the last 10 seconds of Kobe Bryant's world famous basketball match winning, whatever it was, 10-second video, and I own it, but it exists in the World Wide Web and can technically be deemed to be almost, it's public domain information. And I own the original. But my grandmother or my sister or my son has made a copy from YouTube and has a clone of that, exactly the same thing. I'm questioning, so where's the rarity and where's the value?
Would that not be the same argument then if you owned the Mona Lisa? Because everybody's seen the Mona Lisa. It's you can buy t-shirts, mugs, slippers, socks, whatever. But there's only one that hangs in the Louvre. And they own it. And so what's the difference between having that one ownership? One person has the one true ownership, but everybody else can enjoy the art.
I think there's two ways to look at this, if I may. So, like the Wu-Tang Gang, as you know, put out this one CD that some guy bought for $2 million, right? So, in theory, he owns this one CD nobody can ever own. On an NFT, like we're doing with the artist, forget music for a second, but with the artists. So, like a Connor. Like he paints a painting for 200,000 euro, you get the painting and the NFT. That's all you get. So in that respect, it's like if I would go and buy just a painting or an etching from somebody, I own it. So I think when you start about like Kobe Bryant, that's overplayed. I mean, that's like saying I own the rights to whatever. Great. So does everybody else on YouTube. So there's no value in that. But I think in artwork, the value, especially in Asia, you get the cred of owning digital assets, if you will, or digital art or a digital, graphic novel is much more intense than it is anywhere else, right? For them, it's like, look what I own on my phone. And that's very cool. They don't actually care about the physical asset. So what we do in Noisy Panda, right, is we want people to own the physical and the digital, or that poly digital thing that I sent you the other day. And Neither of us have a clue of how really to pronounce it, and we're good with that. But I think that's a different thing than saying, oh, I own this or I own that. A buddy of mine years ago would buy the film rights to like James Bond, and you could buy the film clip, like about an inch long of a scene in James Bond. They would blow it up and they made 100 of them. So you could own that, but it doesn't really increase in value because everybody can watch the James Bond movie. But if you paint a painting or draw an etching, and there's one, and then one FT that goes with it, in my opinion, I think that's where the value is. And I don't think there's value today. I think this is all overblown. I think Web3 is just a bunch of mental masturbation. It's no better than Web2 at this point. I think blockchain, as it goes, and quantum relativity or quantum computing, if you will, gets larger, and blockchain can produce more things. I think, then I think in 5 or 10 or 15 years, the digital assets will have a whole nother meaning. That's how I'm, kind of looking at it instead of.
Okay, so I would agree with that. But what's the advantage of owning the original Mona Lisa?
Well, nothing, because the Louvre's not selling it.
Okay.
But if you think about it, though, if you own that, they own all the rights. So when all the tourists come from all over the world and pay however many euro to go to look at all the artwork and stand in line for an hour to look at, Da Vinci in drag, then what ends up happening is, I see you smirking. So then what happens is then they go buy a mug, or they go buy they go buy a poster, they buy the T-shirt. So for them, it's marketing. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's just like anything in art. Like I own artwork from artists that are well known. And I asked one once, so what makes you better than somebody nobody knows? He goes, it's marketing. It's the agent. It's somebody like me. They stuck it like they're putting you in a gallery. They like you. And it's them to promote you. Like, you could paint just as good as whoever, but if nobody promotes you, nobody knows. So it's promotion. So they've done a good job with that.
They've done a good job. But the other thing about it is that the world, shall I call it the art world, doesn't want to exclude people from experiencing the art. Now, I have a book on the Sistine Chapel, the restoration of the Sistine Chapel. I have one of the books on the Sistine Chapel that was published in 1954. All the pictures are monochrome. Okay. There's virtually no color in it. And then I've got the National Geographic book that shows the restoration of the Sistine Chapel that was done in the late 1980s to early 1990s. And the fundamental difference is so extreme that if you cannot experience it in real life, it's almost, you have to Rome, you have to go to the Sistine Chapel. You have to get shouted at when you lie down on the floor to keep so that your neck doesn't get stiff, because we're all white-haired, we can travel, but we get stiff necks. And experience that. The experience of having the original is a completely different experience from having a copy. Now, South Africa's, even digital, South Africa's the third most, I think it's the third or fourth most reproduced painting in the world, after things like the Mona Lisa, the Last Supper, and some parts of the Sistine Chapel, like the Creation, the segment of God and Adam touching fingers, is a painting by a South African artist called Vladimir Tretyakov, who was a Russian, or I think he was Russian, immigrant. And all he did was he painted a Chinese lady, but his color usage was, she was an emerald, bright emerald, almost viridian green. Okay. And it's called the Green Lady. Now, I don't like the content. I didn't say personally, would I hang it in my house? Bloody hell, no. I don't like the content. Can I truly say that there is no artistic value in it? No. There's a huge amount of artistic value. There's a huge amount of skill. There's a huge amount of understanding of the human form and capturing that essence of the model. And even though I don't particularly like it as a piece of work, it is the third or fourth most reproduced picture in the world. And Vladimir Tretyakov was the one who actually said, I will make limited edition prints, I'll sign them, and we can sell them to people for less than the original, but it is as close to the original as possible. And essentially, that's where NFTs are. At this point in time, that's what they are. They're as close as possible, a clone of the original, as close as we can possibly get it. And owning the original NFT is owning an original piece of digital information. However, everybody else doesn't get excluded. And that's all that artist galleries do. So Turner at the British, I think it's the British Museum, I can't remember which one in London he is at, the Turner Museum, I think, had a series of watercolors of sea battles and incredible light. They replicate those with minute attention to detail to make sure the color is correct, so that they can share good art with us normal people, the plebs.
But at the end of the day, it's to make money. It's nice that they share it and they do everything, but they're just here to make money. So
but it is
in this generation or this era in human development, the NFT market, and forget digital art. I mean, like Bill Gates, I remember I read an article back in the 90s where he made a deal with the Louvre and he got to display all the art of the Louvre digitally at his house. Yeah. Right? Because he bought the rights or however their deal was. So really NFTs have just come 20 years forward now, where any of us can get if you will, a digital frame, hang it in our house, and we can have our assets shown in our house. It's the same thing, basically. And it's to your point that people can basically see. The only difference is that if you get a digital asset and the physical asset, if you will, from a well-known or a half well-known artist, and when they die, which is, it's like Andy Warhol was good, but they just sold for $193 million. It's good to be dead, right? So if you buy something today and then I pay $100, just say, or $500 for the digital and the physical, and in 5 years, this artist dies and blows up. Well, now my physical asset is worth whatever, and my digital is probably worth just as much as my physical. So I can sell one and keep the other. So I think, the old world is like you paint, it goes on a wall, that's it. I think now, and like I said, I think in 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years is where the value of it will all, because there'll be other things they can do with it. The technology will be more advanced. I think, if for lack of a better term, the blockchain, the NFT, all of that will be more advanced. So when you buy an asset, so to speak, that, there's like, oh, this is good. Right now, you got with, companies making money on gas fees and companies doing this and companies doing that. Half the people don't know how to do it. It's too difficult to actually buy an NFT. So like what we're doing here at Noisy Panda, shameless plug, we're trying to make it that you can just buy it with a credit card and we can just send it to you basically, right, on your phone. So I think with all this, you've got to use, no, you don't. Crypto algorithms, why they call it a currency, I have no idea. It's an algorithm. Good luck and God bless. The blockchain is very nice because it gives you the pedigree of it, if you will, that everybody in art world wants to see, right? They want to see the provenance. So that's what the blockchain does. I was with a company a few years ago, and that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to do blockchain for the old masters. So we talked to Sotheby's, we talked to Christie's, and they were all like, this is great, but that's a lot of work. So now with the blockchain, if you paint a great piece and someone buys your physical and digital, then the blockchain starts with, just say David buys it, it starts with David, right? So everybody can now see the provenance and if they determine value down the road. So I think if we look at NFTs in that respect, or the blockchain in that respect, I think that's better. If we look at it, it's just like, oh, I'm going to paint some monkeys and make some money. I think that's I don't want to use scam, but that's the scam part of it, right? That's the Ponzi. When what we're trying to do, I think, and the way we look at it is, I want to give you something that has value. Like I want to give you the physical, the digital, boom. The clip of Kobe Bryant, to me, that would have no value because you're right. It's on YouTube. And unless every time it's shown on YouTube or, a sporting channel, I'm going to get paid for it. It's kind of like owning the masters for music, right? If I don't get paid for it, then what's the value? I think, right. It's like I said, the Wu-Tang Gang did that, the CD within a box, and, and the guy bought it and he bought it for $2 million and it has 6 songs that nobody can hear but this one person. Okay. There's a value if you're a fan of the Wu-Tang Gang, and there's a value if you like that, right? And the artwork was beautiful in the boxes. The flip of it's the same with an NFT, I think. And I think that's the problem is, in my opinion, they get promoted wrong. It's like, buy this because. no, it's just digital. Like, you know, there's no money in that to me. It's like, I want the physical, like even like Wilbur, the gentleman we were talking about earlier, and we said, can you sign your stuff? Because it's all, if you will, digital. And he said, of course. So he would print it out and sign it. So if you buy an NFT, kind of like what you could do, it would be like you own this one signed copy.
Yeah.
And the rest it could be where, so there's a value.
Correct.
And I think that's, if it's done that way, it's different.
The other thing that I do, which I don't know if other artists do, but I presume they do because they're not stupid, is when I scan or take photographs of my artwork and put it onto my computer in digital format, I fill in the meta tags that we need to put in.
Right.
So the artist is there, the date it was created, who it was signed, when it was signed. There's a location, there's a date and a time, and there's a timestamp which is embedded in the JPEG.
Right.
So that I can prove that that was my work and was taken on, taken from my Olympus camera or my iPhone or whatever I used at that point, and where the location was at the time of taking it. So the meta tags are all in that, and then that's the one advantage of NFTs that I see, is that you can restrict what people do with it. So if you sell it, you can give a portion to the person who originally owned it. So there's an investment portion, shall I say, a future value, not investment, a future value portion, and that's one thing which I enjoy. But I'm only interested in selling NFTs if I can sell my original work. I want people to look at my work as the original, because it is a different experience. If I show you my work, if I could show you my work right now, and show you the original in comparison to the digital one which is on your screen, there's a variation in the color. There's a variation in how you experience it. Whereas if you look at the actual physical work and you look at it long enough, my work takes you on a journey to discover things that I don't even know are there.
Right.
And that's the other part of, that's all to do with how I approach my creative process.
But
I think that's what we're trying to do. Sorry, Steve.
No, I was going to say, to that point is what we just said, right? So if somebody wants to buy, like at the gallery, they want to buy the physical, whether it's the watercolor, the painting, or the etching, and it has an NFT tied to it, they get A and B.
Yes.
So, right, they have now two assets, if you will. And I don't know if I consider an NFT, even though, Wall Street, my old stomping ground, considers everything an asset because they're just trying to screw everybody on a daily basis. But I don't know if I consider the digital NFT an asset, or if it's just a offshoot of the physical asset. So the physical asset to me is a real asset. The digital to me, I don't think it, I think we're in an immature stage where I don't think that the digital yet is a real asset. When Kuntz sold his little bunny rabbit for 6 million or 60 million or whatever it was as an NFT, and I'm like, seriously? Like, if I get the real bunny with that, okay, so then I have an asset. But I think, like I said, I know in Asia it's big. I think down the road it'll be big, but I think technology will help it catch up. I think when quantum, they've changed it from quantum computing to quantum relativity, but when quantum computing gets to a point where it can process and everything, I think that's when the digital assets will come alive, if for lack of a better word. And I think that's when people will be like, look at my, I have this digital portfolio of, whether it's Picasso, whether it's you, whether it's definitely not me, but all these artists, I think that is where the value comes. And then everybody who now is buying it in 10 years is going to go, look how smart I am. Look, I bought a car. I bought a car when it first came out, and people are like, "Oh my God, you're crazy! Whether the horse is better." I think it's going to be one of those things where people are like, "Look how smart you were! You bought that." And I think it has to go through a bunch of revelations and a bunch of changes yet to where you say to someone, I have digital assets. I mean, I know guys that have their digital asset screen that they bought on Amazon for $300 or $400, and they have digital, and it, it rotates every couple hours or every day, but that's very nice. But I'm like, so where's the artwork, or where's the painting? So I think that's,
the painting,
so to me, I want the actual, I'm like you, the artwork I have hangs. I like to go look at it every now and then, and you see something different every time. Digitally, I don't know if I will. And like I said, 20 years from now, technology will be probably where the digital will be just as good or better than the original.
Yeah.
But still, it's something about like, I read a digital paper, but when I read a book, I want to touch the book. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's one of those things, as time progresses, it'll change for the better, hopefully.
It is about tangibility ultimately, Steve.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
I agree.
And
But
tangible assets.
I think at the moment what we're trying to do at Noisy Panda is to offer that, a very small and where possible, a bridge between these two aspects of it. We try as much as we can to really stimulate artists, including artists like Luke, to first of all, to sell the original piece of art, and the plus part of that art is the NFT.
Correct.
Because certainly here in the Western part of the world, the social value of the NFT is not that high. Go to the East, as Steve was alluding to, you have social credibility, you have a social currency, and they will potentially be the NFTs. But Noisy Panda, I think, is we openly encourage artists, please give us your original artwork, and then we will just add to that the NFT. So it's like two for one.
2 for 1. However, the interesting thing about it is that the NFT thinking process, the conceptual idea of NFTs is making real digital ownership.
Right.
And I mean, I think fundamentally it comes down to ownership. How do you actually own an intangible item? I can't pick up a pixel. I can pick up a pencil, but I can't pick up a pixel. However, I can own a pixel in terms of a piece of digital information. And so ownership is then key. And that's why I like the idea of, you have the NFT, but you can only access the NFT if you buy when you buy it because you get the original.
Yep.
And that's the only thing, because our entire world is going into a subscription model. It's a modality that is not about developing assets, but developing costs.
Right.
So you have subscription software. You have, people in the UK don't own motor cars. They pay a subscription for a car club, and they can pick up whatever car they want. They make a booking. They get it the next day. They go away for the weekend. They come back again. They don't own the asset. We are in an era where younger generation of people, let's say under the age of 35 right now, are virtually not going to be able to produce, purchase, or develop physical asset bases like a house, because it's just too expensive. And if the entire world is going into a subscription model where you do not own anything, but it's costing you a fortune, how do you develop assets? That's what I like about the Noisy Panda promise, is that you get both. So you have a physical asset that's tangible, believable, and seeable. You can lick it, you can taste it, you can take a bite of it. And you can have the digital asset where it'll remain in pristine, perfect condition for as long as your bits and bytes last.
Or
that's
you transfer it.
Yeah, or you transfer it. Yeah.
Right.
But as long as those bits and bytes exist, there will be access to that. And if you can prove the ownership, as the blockchain does, and it gives it its pedigree, as Steve said, then you can prove it. And then I can prove ownership on my artwork because the meta tags are covered and they're locked and embedded into the file.
Right.
And nobody knows how to unlock them anyway, but that's not the point. I'm just there to protect
Nobody
them.
even knows what they are. What are you kidding? So
exactly, yeah. Exactly. But it is just a method of protecting the original artwork. But that's so. Yes, I have a question over NFTs, whether they are valuable today and more valuable tomorrow will be seen as the technology develops. Because as we know, NFTs are going to be going through a number of evolutionary and revolutionary processes before it settles into an accepted transactional purchase. Before it's truly accepted. Yes, we know about Bored Ape Yacht Club and hundreds of billions are running, but as a very wise man once said, a fool and his money are soon parted. That's all I need.
And one-trick ponies don't go that way. And just because Christie and Sotheby's are selling NFTs, that's wonderful, but Christie and Sotheby's are not a charity. So when
No.
they say, look at the NFT auction we're doing, okay, sure, I got it. I'm a shareholder. I want you to sell whatever. I don't care if you sell, whatever artist pooped in a can and you sold it for 5 million, sell that all day long. But that's what I'm saying. I think it has to evolve. And I think that's what we're trying to do. But I think that's why to me, it's like you have to get A and you got to get B. If you're just selling digital assets, and I don't digital, whatever, I don't think they're an asset. I think that's an issue. But like I said, 10 or 20 years as technology evolves and however you can display it evolves, I think then maybe, yes, it'll become an asset class. I know, all the investment bankers are trying to figure out how to make it an asset class because they want to make more money. Sotheby's and Christie's want to make it an asset class. They want to make it more money. Everybody wants to make it more. And I'm like, yeah, but you got to give me something for it. You can't give me like, here's one of 100. Okay, that's like a lithograph or an X, or you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, great. I bought a lithograph. If I want to buy a lithograph, I'll go buy a lithograph. It's the same price. So I think what we keep saying, once it evolves, I think there's something there. I think it's just like, it has to go, like when we talk about using NFT for sports, for ticketing or music events or a show, I think there's something there. I think it just has to evolve to whatever the next level is and what we're trying to do to get it there. So people go, I see the value. Like, I think this is cool that I get it. I get this instead of a paper ticket because of X. And I think that's kind of where we're trying to get it. Who knows?
The other thing that I really enjoy about it is that photography becomes, yes, we all know about the truism that it captures a moment in time, and what was it? Unforgettable memories or moments brought to you by Kodak in the 1980s, whatever it was. Right. And songs like Kodachrome from Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel. Yep. However, when we add photographs and you start embedding that, you can suddenly start saying, hold on, we have an experiential process that happens in a gallery. Now, can you imagine? I mean, I've seen it done. Ferrari did it a couple of years ago in South Africa, where they at a car show, they did not have one car on the stand. You walked into the middle of the stand and they just played you the sound of the engine.
Only Ferrari can do that.
Okay, only Ferrari can do that.
Only Ferrari. Everybody else, you would think they're like, what the heck?
During that car show, they got 50 orders from all over the world just because of the music of the engine. Now,
and on
Ferrari
that note, gentlemen, I think we'll leave it with that cliffhanger. What sort of noise do we have to make that people are just going to buy Luke's art from Noisy Panda? Luke, thank you very much for your time
Thanks,
today.
Dave. Thanks, Steve. Always good to see you guys.
Thank you.